Good
And we're
evening, good evening,
live.
good afternoon. Wednesday, May 28th. We are at the end of May,
Yeah, and we're at the end of season 4. This is our season 4 finale. Can you
season
believe
four
we've done 4
finale.
seasons already? And this started just with a crazy concept of talking about the different shifts in life that we might not even expect, but how can we roll with those with a sense of humor and a different perspective? And what shifts do we want to create in this world to make it a better place? So that's where we got started. And then the name of the show just
Fell
it lent
off Dina's
itself
tongue.
to
Oh, shit.
yeah, house shift.
Oh,
It's a real
shit.
shift show and we talk some real shift here. So today we are excited to be talking about money. It is a cringy topic for some people. Some people, it's tricky to
It
to
is.
talk about it. And some people have been raised to be like, you don't ask people about their money, you don't bring up that topic, just like religion and sex and politics, right? So those
Right,
are some of those almost considered taboo topics. But we want to dive right in. We want to shift the perspective on that.
right. I think that's kind of what it is, too. It is a perspective where some families may have been open and honest and talked about the money situation, even with their kids as they're growing up. And some, like you said, they will not even speak of it. Maybe even husband and wife don't even know each other's finances. And it's like, no, the wife never asked the husband, that kind of situation, or vice versa, right? You have no idea what these cultures instill today. So, what's really fun about cultures now opening up about these topics and um, making that taboo more normalized has been, it's been interesting because I now see a lot of podcasts on YouTube about finances. It's a little bit more talked about, but it's always nice to be able to have a guest speaker or someone who does it as a living so that we can kind of get into the nitty gritties of it. I think this one should not have been a clean cut. As you always know, my stories always have an explicit song, and I kind of do it on purpose just for fun. But everybody kind of knows like the money songs out there, and it's really fun. And but it's like, how serious do we take our finances, right? So
Mhm.
even though we may laugh about it, joke about it, and it's like, oh no, no, don't talk about it, we should be talking about it and taking it a little bit more seriously. So without further ado, we're going to have our wonderful, beautiful, amazing special guest come on the show this afternoon with us. Doug, welcome to the Shift Happens show here with Dina and myself. Like we said, we've been doing this now. This is our 4th season now coming to an end. So you are our finale guest on
Wow,
the grand finale.
wow, that's impressive. Yeah,
Guest for season 4. You
great.
can go back and check out all of our interesting topics that we had. Like Dina said, we do amazing different topics on this show. But today, I think it's very important that we do discuss some finances. What do you guys say?
Yeah,
Well,
let's do it.
I'm excited to be here and appreciate being the sort of year-end wrap-up, but hope we can provide your viewers and listeners with some great advice and really turn that whole narrative you were talking about, where some families just don't talk about it, and the what occurs in those sort of environments is people try and figure out on their own, and they don't they don't get the confidence you sort of need, as opposed to families that really do talk about it and really share and get their kids going early. And just we deal with people, adults, and find that there's a real difference between those that start young and those that don't.
I wore my green today, and as Doug can relate, we're fellow Saskatchewanians, so I dug out a rider shirt. So green is often. I just thought for money we had to have
Yeah,
green.
nice.
I like what you said, Doug, about starting early with kids. Why don't we start there?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we run across lots of kids who work, even and even from a lemonade stand. Kids across the street last weekend had a lemonade stand, and the neighbors all came out and supported, and a whole bunch of money went in the jar. And I think what's important is that what the parents do then, right?
Mhm.
And I think that kids are apt to want to spend the money, and the lesson can start right there at 5 or 6 years old. Is that whenever time we make money, we
Yeah.
save some. We put some in this bucket. We also put some money in this bucket, and then we spend some money and have some fun with it. And I think that's where it starts. And I think you get savers from that, and you get kids that want to accumulate and keep track of it. And I think if you encourage that really is all you really need to do to get kids interested in money and having money and starting with good habits early. And that really is not spending all the money you make.
Yeah.
Another narrative that we often come up against when you talk about people as adults working through money blocks and mindset around money is the messages they were given as children that maybe weren't that healthy, and maybe an underlying narrative all along, like money doesn't grow on trees, which obviously
It kind of does.
it kind of does, but besides, but I mean, that's
Papers
what it's
from
made of.
trees,
It's
right?
made of paper. But some of the negative things that people have to confront later on, and realizing that, ooh, maybe that wasn't the healthiest attitude towards money.
Yeah, I think of course, we see the full spectrum of people. We see people who, as you know, Dina, come to us in a divorce situation and really have saved none, and they're in their 50s, and they're it's a real struggle of how they're going to make it and retire. And then we see other people that just are young and seem to have money everywhere, and you're thinking, well, how is this possible that they don't necessarily make any more money, but it's that whole deal of funding the different buckets and putting money away. And usually we find, and I mean almost 100%, we can go back and say which one of your parents handled the money in the house, and how was it handled. And they'll tell a story. Oh yeah, my mom, she always was a saver. She always said we had to save. We all had our bank accounts. She showed us how much money we had in our bank accounts. She taught us to invest it, and so that it, I learned about compounding interest as a young child. And so, those are the kind of people that think, gee, we don't have enough money, and they're way ahead of the game. And we run across that. And it almost 100% is discussion and observing families. And you can see the other side where maybe husband and wife are fighting about money.
Yeah.
And in the house, that becomes the taboo, because we don't have this kind of money, and we've spent too much money, and there's a sort of fear that revolves around that. And so I think you get those two extremes, and everybody falls in between. So Cari, with your 6 kids, and Dina with your kids, I mean, it's really important early to teach them about what they're going to have to know to be able to retire and have the kind of money to be able to enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely. I firmly believe one thing that I taught my kids early was just like you said, if there's a lemonade stand, you're going to put half here and half there. If my kids ever wanted like a very expensive game to play or go to a movie or whatever, it would be like, okay, well, you have to put in half, and then we'll put in another half, because we wanted them to see the value of the dollar. Where is it going to? Because you can't get everything in life for free.
Yeah.
Well, by all means, if there's a situation where they earn it and it's like, okay, yeah, go ahead, spend it, have some fun, but take half, save it, do whatever, so that they understand, okay, well, now I'm going to put this aside. As they've gotten a little older, I've been buying financial books for them.
Yeah.
Like the wealthy barber,
Yeah.
just going into chapters and picking up, it doesn't have to be a famous author who does financial books, but just something that will teach them maybe investing and or something that they may be interested in, stocks or whatever, just to kind of give that information to them. Because one thing I noticed, in any school, they don't teach this stuff at
No.
all, right? So this, as parents, we're the ones that have to instill these messages to the children as they're younger, like you said, teach them how to save as a
Mhm.
starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
No, I
kids
think
value.
you can't. Sorry, I don't think you can start early enough. But sorry, Dina, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to interject there that I think kids really value their
Mm-hmm.
possessions more if they've got some skin in the game.
Yeah, yeah, no question. Growing up, we used to have what we called a black book that my dad kept, and you, when you did your jobs or did things to earn money, you could put it into his book, and then for those purchases you were talking about, Cari, he would match up. So he would. He obviously knew he was going to have to buy me a bike, but he tricked me into saving half the money for the bike. And like you say, you have skin in the game. It means a lot more to you. And I think that it's one of the things in society today that I worry about a little bit. My dad lived through the dirty 30s and through the Second World War and saw times when, no one had money. No one, and
Yeah.
our kids today, uh, they break a hockey stick and they want a new $100 hockey stick, or skates cost $200, and it's just a given, and they don't, because they grow up in sort of a society where all the kids are getting all this stuff. It's, you really have to stop and say, okay, hold it, what are you going to contribute to this, and what are we going to do on the weekend, and how can you work, and here's some money. You, of course, you can go to the store and spend some of it, but we're going to put some of it away towards a bigger purchase, or just towards having your first investment account. Like, that's
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a sense of pride as well that they have contributed, and some responsibility and maturity goes hand in hand with seeing the results of what they can, the power of what they can do with money.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the question is that if you're a parent that's not financially savvy, you know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
does happen. And we find in our practice, we have so many smart women that stayed home and looked after kids, and then that became their focus and their job, and they tend to have someone else look after the finances and do the, hey, did we put money into an RSP or did we put money away? And they just don't participate in that. And then they wake up
Yeah.
one day sometimes in a divorce situation and feel really that they are behind the eight ball in knowledge, and they actually feel not stupid, but they feel embarrassed that they don't know. And it's just because they were experts in making sure kids got to school and had proper lunches and got to their concerts and supported them and did all that stuff, which is a full-time job, and left it for somebody else. So we do a lot of adult education. That's a big part of what we do at our practice, is make sure that that people are getting to know more and more all the time about the different parts of investing, and yeah. So it happens a lot that people just get to a certain age and that they didn't have to do it, so they don't do it. It's like doing math. If you're not doing it very much, you lose your skills.
Yeah. If you don't use it, you lose it, basically. So if someone were to walk into your establishment and said, hey, I'm one of those that, yeah, I didn't save, I was married, this, that, whatever. Now you're facing this divorce, no finances going in. What is like kind of the first step that you would take them through in that type of a process?
First step is we do budgeting.
Okay.
So we have a very thorough budget sheet that we send to them on day one. Say, even if you don't know, even if this is new to you, just when a bill goes out, write it in the column, and then get to know all the bills. And then you'll see, all the different columns, which will lead you to start to think about, okay, yeah, that's right. I didn't budget anything for pets. And, pets could cost quite a bit of money, and they go to the store and they go, oh my goodness, I didn't really realize it, but pet food and taking dogs to the vet. So there needs to be a budget for that. And ultimately it takes us about a month or two. And what we get back is a detailed budget saying, thank you. I never really thought about a lot of these items. And how do I deal with holidays, for instance, in a monthly budget? And, just things that happen once or twice a year. And so we get that to me is the most important first thing is knowing what life costs.
Yeah. And then that's also something we can teach our children. We can probably give them a little budget to work with as well. Their allowance money.
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely begin to teach them what things are actually really expensive in this life that they take for granted. Right. And nobody wants to hear it. Sorry, go ahead, Dina.
I was just going to say, I heard of something one time that made a lot of sense. And a dad he happened to be the bills were paid out of his wages. And so he brought his paycheck home in cash. He actually took it to the bank, cashed it out. They set the bills out on the table. They had the family involved. The kids were in their teens, and just set the money from the paycheck that was needed to cover the payments on these bills as a object lesson, basically, to show like this is how we have to stretch the actual dollars.
Yeah. That's great visual.
Great. Yeah. Because it goes into learning too, right? Some people learn visually, some people learn hands-on, whatever. So that may also go into teaching finances where, like you said, you're literally putting the piece of paper, the actual bill on the table, lay them all out, and then you're taking your money and going, okay, this is going here.
Right.
And then this one's going here. And this one's going here, and then, okay, what do we have left? And then it's like, oh, God. Then they learn, right? Completely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I try and get people to use cash because we don't need it in society, right? I mean, and the banks will give you as many cards as you will take. And that's really to confuse you about how much money you actually have. And so when we have people that struggle with budgets, what we do is when we have spending, I say, when you get your paycheck, take it in cash and put it in a coffee tin like your grandma did. And when you're out, you're out.
Oh, yeah.
Because your credit card will come due next month. And it just is one of those things. And then if you can't pay it, you say, oh, I'll pay it next month. And, you get yourself into. But cash is really where it's at in regards to when the jar is empty. You have to wait till next month to spend. And that's again, instant visual that I don't have that money.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have debit cards and credit cards and lines of credit and different things, you never really have to deal with the fact that you don't have any more money to spend.
Absolutely.
That can work for the kids too. Back to the family is, well, let's see, is there money in there for this month? Because here's the cash to work with. Right. And we do know we have to cover some bills. And, oh, you lost your hoodie again? Well, let's see. You probably have 7 more in the closet. A replacement, because this is all the money that's there. This has to pay for dinner and gas and
all that extra stuff that we don't, like you said, we see the paper, the bills, but then you have to show the kids, well, we also need to buy food and we have to buy gas for the vehicle to take you guys to school. Correct. And then there's extracurricular stuff at school. If there's a field trip or, like you said, lost hoodie or broken stick from some random kid at school, all these different things. So how do we show the invisible stuff like that?
Yeah, I love the story about the cash. I'm going to recommend that because ultimately you have to start with what you have to have, and that is to pay for your mortgage, or we don't have a house. You have to pay heat and light and water, or we'll freeze to death. And so the priorities come to, what you have to pay versus, at that end, what have we got left? And how are we going to allocate that between going out for dinner, paying for sports, and to realize that there's a trade-off. If we go out for dinner, if that's our discretionary money in the jar, if we choose to go reach in, so let's all go for dinner. I want to go out for dinner. I want to order pizza. Yes, but that comes out of another bucket, right? That comes out of maybe we can't afford to, go to a movie or go to the mall or that sort of thing. And I think I don't think it takes that much for kids to get it.
Well, and you can suggest alternatives. So I think the lesson that they can learn, so it doesn't become something they go to therapy for 10, 20, 30 years later, is we
can never have pizza.
Yeah, we can't order pizza right now, but you know what? We've got the groceries on hand, and let's just have a family pizza night that we make them ourselves. Yeah. Instead of going to a movie, let's bring out the board games dust them off and let's have a family games night, or let's go for a bike ride in the park, or, get creative and add a life lesson around that. I think is also an opportunity for people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, make it fun and interesting. Like you said, if you can't go to a movie, if you have the means to be able to do like your own backyard movie, I think that's way more fun than going to an actual movie, and then have their friends over and family, and everyone can bring a snack, and then you're all set. I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat. That would be so fun.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do we do when, so that's the early sort of stages in their life. And then, what about like the next stages? Now it's like they're starting to become adults, and then they're trying to instill these lessons. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize, oh, there's money here, money there. Usually they come back and they're like, I'm so sorry, I spent all your money.
Well, I think the best, and I actually learned this, my daughter came home one day and said, my friend takes 30% of every single paycheck and puts it into an investment and never touches it.
Yeah.
And so she's accumulated money, and again, we operate on our bank account, right? I mean, we all do it. It's on our phone, it's on our card. We know it's like, oh, I've got $500 left in my account. And, the money you don't have put in your bank account that you save, it really doesn't, it doesn't come into the picture. It's not like you got to save your last $200. You save your first $200 and you start to build that. And then that gives you a head start on probably 80% of the planet that lives paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And you obviously modify your spending based on living within your means and saving first, right? Paying yourself first before you spend. I think if you do that, you're off to a great start. And then I think that gets you in the zone of, okay, what am I going to do with this money?
Yeah. Well, can I just quickly ask, what did you recommend, like maybe a percentage of how much you should be putting away, like the saving or paying yourself first? What is the recommended amount?
I think it's 30%. I think if you can do 30% of your paycheck, you put it away. And I think it's like that that establishes for when you get older. Now, we know as parents, you have to have your, these are the bills. There's I put away for my retirement, and then here's the money that I put in case of emergency. The dishwasher breaks or fridge need. We all know that just things jump out at you, and you have to be able to go into that bucket. But I think 30%. If you can live off of 70% and put away 30%, you're in really good shape.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think these people show up at 40 and they've got a house and they've got it mortgage paid half off. They've got their money in their RSPs and their TFSAs, and they've got all these things. And when we sit down with them, we're like, my goodness gracious, you're way ahead of the game. And the earlier you start, I mean, the statistics, and I should have them, is that if you put away money start at 20, start putting money into an RSP versus waiting for 30 or 40. I mean, the amount you have to put in to get to retirement because of the power of compounding it's staggering. So start early, save some, and don't ever dig into your savings to buy things for yourself.
I like the principle of the pay your first, save your first 200, not your last 200.
Yeah.
Because then you're in a panic and now you're scrambling, but now you have that sense of security that, okay, I've got that covered. So now the rest is for the rest of it. And even when you do set out those bills, you can pull out a receipt from the grocery store and drop some cash on that as that example of a necessity as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's already been paid, but it's recurring. That's recurring.
Yeah, and I think gas too, right? For the car, you could do that.
Doug, where do you find the biggest gap in financial literacy and people's understanding around money? What's kind of the most frequent thing that you encounter?
Well, I think we encounter people without a plan.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing their best, and in their minds they're doing their best, but they have no idea what it costs or how much they're going to have, or and so establishing a plan and then monitoring that plan, even if it's small. I mean, we all want to retire someday. We all will retire someday. But what your retirement looks like is based on the plan you make. And again, those who make a plan, commit to a plan, those couples that do that end up being the wealthy barber. They don't do anything really crazy. They just put money away and invest it for the long term and have a plan and then review that plan. With clients here, every October, November, we say, okay, this is what we said we were going to do last year. This is what the stock market did. This is the returns in your account. You said you guys were going to do this. Where's the money?
Did you do it?
Let's come on before you go on that winter holiday. Make sure you put money away, and we just hold people accountable for it. So I think that having a plan, and I don't think it's ever too early. I mean, kids that want to have a lot of money when they're young and are prepared to do the work for it tend to have that kind of money when they get older. So
what are some key components to a plan? Like, what would be the top 3-4 things maybe that you should consider on that plan? Well,
I think one is the living. What can you live within? Life is expensive right now. I feel very sad for our children and kids right now. I mean, what's rent costs and what is the cost of living and going out is just skyrocketed over the last 4 or 5 years. And so, what can you afford? What can you save? And then discipline. I don't think it's more complicated than that. I really don't. And if you put that into hey, if I save this kind of money and put this kind of money away, and if my company, here's another one. People that don't take advantage of company plans, where the company's matching and giving away free money, and they say, well, I didn't make an RSP contribution, but not only did you not make an RSP contribution, but your company was going to match it.
Oh, yeah.
It's frightening about how many people we come across say, oh, no, I think I have a plan at work, but I didn't sign up for it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also one of those things that a lot of people don't know about that until you actually ask, or the company tells you, say, the first day that you get hired on, oh, yeah, by the way, we match RSPs or whatever. I think it's just one of those misconceptions of like, well, they don't do it. Whereas if you actually ask and find out, or even talk to employees that have been there a longer time and just kind of get like the back end details. Okay,
Right.
well, do you know any other little hacks that the company may offer when it comes to financial plans or whatever, like you said, if they match your RSPs and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, we just have to get that knowledge for ourselves. And like we said, some companies won't even talk about it. I think now they're better, but I think back kind of in the day, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't really heard of.
No.
And now it's like they're pretty open about it, going, hey, you know, this is what we offer and so
Yeah.
forth. I think it's more family friendly as
And
well too. Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. We run across teachers and nurses and ask them, so how does your pension work? And they go, I don't really know. You know, is it defined benefit? Is it defined contribution? Not really sure. But when it's a pension, you sign up. They, you know, when it's an option at a company, people tend to think, okay, well, I'll do that at the end of the year. Again, they don't say take $200 off of my check or $500 off my check and match. And so it's again that thing where you just do it up front. It's so easy when you do it up front, when you sign. And again, in some cases they're quite complicated, and there is no one to explain it. And I think that's another problem is that people feel that they shouldn't ask the questions, or they don't feel right about saying, hey, you know, I don't understand what this means. How does it work? You know, I mean, I tell my kids every year, you don't understand. You take money when you make an RSP contribution, you take money from your own account and you put it in your other own account and you get a deduction on your taxes. Like you're just moving money from yourself to yourself and the government gives you a refund. So don't you want to do all of that? Like, don't you want to get it all, you know, don't you want to maximize it out? And again, at the end of the year, they go, oh, you know, I can only make this much. I only saved this much. And I think, you know, that's free money from your company. It's free money from the government. You know, I mean, you really want to have a strategy about keeping as much money in your family and away from out of the government, because you control it when it's in your family and you have no control of it when it goes away for the government. So
that's interesting.
What about estates and that too? Do you deal with like guiding people through helping to plan their estates? There's also giving that you can, charitable giving,
absolutely,
right?
programs.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big part of what we do when clients get to be 50.
Yeah.
And they've created this wealth. Okay, what's it for? You know, what's the purpose? You're not going to spend it all. What are you going to do with it? Where, you know, how have you planned for the transition of your wealth to your children? Have you done it again in the most tax efficient way? Are your wills up to date? Are you taking the right money? That is a very, very important stage. But it's a stage for those who have gotten to the place where they're not going to spend all their money and that they do have an estate. And you know, charitable giving is important. You know, we like to say when you die, you give money to the government. You can give it to a charity, and you can give it to your children. But you really need to pick the two you want to give it to, right?
Yeah.
Because you can choose charity over the government.
Okay.
And, you know.
Yeah.
So again, that's a process. I mean, it's from, you know, I would say from my perspective, we have our best clients are sending their kids in by themselves here.
Good.
So they
Bye.
don't come with mom and dad. They come and they're, you know, typically the ones that are interested. They're interested in our business. And, you know, the stock market's very interesting. They know these companies. They know, you know, I mean, every kid that took some money and bought Apple over the last 20 years, you know, has made a lot of money and knows they know what stores happening. They know what place in the mall, what companies are good. Well, they know what products are out there. And so that can be super fun too, even with a little bit of money. You don't need a lot of money to buy. You can buy partial shares in these companies now.
Yeah.
So you can
Like
put
penny
$5
stocks.
away a month and buy Apple stock if you want. So that's when it gets fun. That's when they get really interested. You know, and the investments mean more. They start to watch what's going on and pay attention, and then they come up with ideas. I mean, all these a lot of young people that we deal with, kids of parents, are the ones that call about NVIDIA and all the highest flying stocks today. You know, NVIDIA was a computer graphic chips company that made graphics, the best graphics for video games, before it became the brains for automated driving vehicles and for AI. It started out that way. So, I mean, I think you've hit the holy grail, where you have kids that can put some money away, and then they want to invest, and they want to, you know, put their money and start to see it grow and get interested. And yeah, those.
I'm curious, Doug, when you've worked with different generations, whether it's what are some of the different perspective shifts or things you've seen different generations show up with around their understanding around money, or their, even like we started, their reluctance to talk about money, or are they more open about it now? What have you seen?
If they're not talking about it at home, they're not talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless they have sometimes, you know, when we talk to people, we ask them if they're interested, where did you get it? And there's someone.
Yeah.
There's someone. Sometimes it was my grandma would give me a gift every year and told me I had to invest it and I had to explain it to her.
Yeah.
And, you know, that sort of thing. Like, it, you know, it's someone. They don't really typically come up with them themselves, especially if they have no guidance. But we like to get, when we have our first meeting, we go to that and say, okay, who, you know, in your house when you were growing up, who handled the money? And they know.
Yeah.
Are they good with money or bad with money?
Exactly.
Oh, my dad was terrible. He would come home with boats and things and springs, and my mom would get so mad at him. And, you know, so I think it's good. We're laughing about it. I think it's good for them to laugh about it and understand that, you know, they're the product of their upbringing, and you know, it really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when should, you know, if you're deciding maybe to get married, when would be like that conversation of the finances?
Good question.
Yeah, that's very good. I think that I think people before they get married should seek advice on how are we going to handle our finances, and what is going to be the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you can both go to work and you both put, you know, have a joint bank account. The money goes in, somebody pays the bills, the money goes out, and in a lot of cases, somebody takes control and the other person doesn't participate, just lets them do it. And they wake up one day and they have no understanding of it. Yeah. And it's, Dina, you and I know this, it's very frightening for women to wake up one day and go, oh my God, I have not done anything about this in 20 years. And now I'm on my own. And now I'm at probably the most difficult financial time in my life. And I'm, how do I figure this out? Like, how do I even know?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's what they say, you know, money is probably almost the number one reason why people get divorced. So we want to kind of prevent that going into a marriage and go, okay, what are the steps that we can do beforehand? Even say, you know, you're dating with intent to marry. I think even just sitting down and vetting the other person on their financial literacy, going, okay, what do you expect with, you know, if we get married in 5 years, what do you expect will happen with the finances? You know, are we going to have the same account? Now, I've heard few different strategies. One is like the wife has her own, the man has his, and then there's a combined account for them both. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I think that if both are similar type earners,
Yeah.
I think it's great. Let's figure out what this costs. We'll both pitch in. We'll both do our own thing. It's obviously still all money of the marriage, but we will both take responsibility to do these things.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very good, but doesn't happen like that very often at all.
No. Would you recommend it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do not allow someone to take your hard-earned money and spend it like they want to without you being completely on side, because that's where this comes. I thought you were saving money. You know what I mean? I thought every time I asked you, how are we doing? You were saying everything's fine. And now I realize we don't, you were investing in small junior oil and gas companies and,
and I think those conversations have to also happen, whether you're just newly married or if you're a family. I think sitting down once a month and having a conversation and making it a part of a normalized conversation in the household, going, okay, where's the money going to, or how's everybody doing with their saving? Does anyone have questions? That kind of idea. Because again, the more you talk about it, it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to sit down and have our meeting and have a movie night and then talk about the finances while we're doing intermission. And,
Well, and the conversation's coming, instead of just getting to the point that you're afraid or feeling left out, and then you're a little more defensive or combative about it or argumentative. Like it's not a good way to enter that type of a conversation. But if it's like, well, we know that the end of the month or the middle of the month, whatever date you've agreed upon, this is coming up, and we can have those conversations. It's just a check-in and moving on.
Yeah. Because then I think, say there's a child that's more of the spender, and not to shame them, but then they realize, oh, well, maybe it's just finding out what they're spending on. Why are you spending? Why is the need for this or whatever? And then helping them to form a healthier habit of, maybe it's just out of control. Maybe they like to spend it because they want all the hockey gear or whatever. They want the new things, and then kind of go, it's great that you want the new things, but this is, give them like a guideline and an outcome of like, well, if you save up, just a little bit more, you can get the nicer things a little later instead of right now. Correct. And then they're blowing $400 over a couple months over a new hockey stick, right? Or for example, I don't know, but
sometimes when you wait, that urge goes away. I've heard of people throwing things in their Amazon shopping cart, and they tell themselves, I'll wait 48 hours. And if it's something, and a lot of times I've heard, I don't even remember what I put in my cart. That's how badly I wanted it. Right. And
I wait for the sales. I always wait for if there's like a bigger item that I want, and I know it goes on sale once in a while. Like, for example, I wanted an air fryer. So the Ninja air fryer, and usually they can go on sale for like $89 instead of like $99. And then you can see the fluctuations of the sales that happen over time, whatever. But I'll just save it on one of my shopping lists. And every so often, I just go back and I peek on it and go, okay, did they have a sale? And sometimes even when they have sales, it doesn't even go on sale. It's like, oh, $99 is the sale price. And I'm like, no, I've seen it dip down, and I know what you guys are doing. I see you.
You're the expert on the,
I just kind of wait it out. And I'm like, I know I want it, but I'm like, I'll wait for the sale and wait. And so we should talk about wants and needs.
Yes.
Right. As well. So what do you start with the wants and needs as well as the family sitting down, and what are our wants and what are our needs, right?
Well, I think we talked about it before. We have to deal with the needs first. before we get to the wants. That's where people get into trouble, because there is a certain, some people get a certain high from going to the store, to the mall and buying
Retail therapy is not
retail therapy. But I mean, I think that, like, again, brilliant idea. If you've got the cash stacked on the table, like these are, and we draw a line in the middle of the table. And we say, these are things we can't live without: heat, light, food. There it is there. And then here's the piece of which we get to, this is our wants. What do we want? What's a priority? Sit down with the kids. You'd be surprised at how mature your kids will become when they get it. We don't need that at all, Mom. When you're especially if you're a single mom with 6 kids, my good God, like it's, you need all hands on deck, right? I mean, you need your kids to understand. And I think that they know that if it's not explained to them, they're going to say they want to have pizza every night, right? But if they understand that, this doesn't grow on trees. There's that day. I mean, I remember my daughter, I said to her, well, where do you think that money's going to come from? And she said, well, just go down to your office and get it.
Go to the bank machine. It's right there.
Yeah.
They don't know.
What you do at the office is manufacture money. But no, I think that the wants.
I mean, if you're laundering money, then.
Yeah. I think also the lesson of, say, have a vacation fund or a wish fund, and they start to see that grow, and they get to enjoy the payoff, a delayed payoff. And so they're going to understand how savings starts to work, and the reward in that. So when you do finally do the movie night, or if it's a weekend away or a full week, and that fund that they saw grow, and maybe they've even contributed to either directly or indirectly, it's maybe they said, hey, I want to put $5 from my lemonade stand in the vacation, or indirectly by saying, I can do without that want. I'd rather see it go in the vacation fund. That vacation is going to mean a lot more to them.
Agreed. And they're really going to appreciate that. Yeah, I totally agree. Just one other topic that just came to mind here that we don't talk about and isn't talked about much in society is parents talking to their adult children as they get old.
Yes.
And, I don't think your children should learn about this by a lawyer reading the will. No. We see it all the time. Like, our most evolved clients bring their kids in and say, okay, look, this is what we're doing. Because I mean, families fight over the money. Families typically take their oldest daughter or son and say, you need to be I want you to be the executor. Now you've got brothers and sisters, and being an executor is a very, very difficult job. And in some cases, some need the money, some don't need the money. There can be cabins and houses and things and stuff, and all need to be dealt with, which can cause serious breakups in families.
Can I ask one question on that?
Yeah.
For an executor, for those of maybe watching,
yeah,
does it have to be a family member, or can you assign someone outside the family?
Absolutely.
And what do you recommend?
Outside the family.
Okay.
And you can get a trustee to do it. There's a trust company, and a guy, a friend of mine in that business, said he was walking down the hall in his office, and the trustee was with the family, and there was an argument going on, and it was quite heated. He was in his office very concerned, and they left. The trustee came in and he said, gee, I really don't like to see my clients like that. And they say, can you imagine if it was the brother who was sitting there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the family's complaining about how long this is taking, and when am I getting my money, and why are you getting paid to do this? And, I think it's just, people think, will you do it, honey? And you say, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But it's not a good job. It's a terrible job. It can take years to get done, and going through everything, and you got brothers and sisters that are in different cities, and
Yeah.
you're trying to grieve and deal with all this stuff.
Yeah. This is
It's
why you do it beforehand. So everything's in place and you know where you're going to delegate things to, whatever. So
yeah,
you do have an executor that is in the family. Then everyone else kind of has an idea. Okay, well, this is all designated. You can even say, you know, we're leaving the cabin to this family. And if they decide to sell it, they can split the money amongst everybody. Like there can be certain rules and regulations for each item.
yeah.
You know, you can even do that to a point where it's written down, everybody's already delegated and it's already split, you know.
The key is the conversation,
Yeah.
because when you're talking, and it's funny because we talk about cabins, it's one of the biggest things,
Yeah.
because, everyone grew up at the cabin, and everyone has this beautiful view of, it's the greatest place. Nobody knows what it costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the parents are paying forever. The kids
Yeah.
come up, they're bringing their kids. They're like, oh my gosh, you can't get rid of the cabin, right? And then, then so they leave it to the three kids. One can afford it, one doesn't want it, and the other one wants it but can't afford it. And all of a sudden now it's a mess. And not only are you dealing with your three children, but you're dealing with their spouses.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
really not three people in this. There's six people.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't want to go there, and our most evolved clients we're sitting down with their kids and say, okay, listen, your parents are very bright people. They're really doing the right thing. They want you to know the decisions they're making and why they're making them.
Yeah.
And they've already had the conversations about the cabin, and they've decided the cabin will be sold because just
No fights.
yeah.
And they have the option to buy it.
Yeah, you cannot
Yeah.
option to buy it. That's a very good one, because then you really realize how much you want it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, again, you go there for 3 weeks, and it's the best 3 weeks of your summer. You take your kids, they love it, but the rest of the year that place has to be paid for,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
anyway, just if you can
Yep,
get
that's a good
that,
idea.
again,
Yep.
that's the highest level we have in clients, where we're sitting around the table saying, listen, your parents have done a great job in preparing their estate. Everything is in a neat, there's no running around looking for things. They've got it all in this binder. Their wills are here. The things they want to leave to different people are already dealt with. There's a mechanism for all this. You're going to get $2 million. They want you to understand that.
You're not allowed to blow it in one day. It's
Right.
right here.
Right. They want you to invest.
Yeah.
That's why we're here today. They don't want it to be a negative thing, leaving money. So, because quite often there's a will, and kids don't even know their parents have money. They have no idea. They thought, oh my goodness. And the next thing you know, or they leave to grandchildren. And, if you don't talk to your kids, I mean, your will is really the last time you speak to your children, and and you need to make sure you speak the right message.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to read it to them while they're alive and deal with the problems.
I think so. I think that would be good. And then it's the proper tone. And then it's more of an understanding, instead of it's just like reading a text message. You get something come in and you can totally read it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then you're arguing over something. So same thing, it's right then there. And I think it's really loving to do it that way and go, we really, both of us love you so much. These are our intentions with the money. We want to see you do well, instead of it just like on a piece of paper. We love you. Here's some money. Have fun. Bye. Then, it's like, we just have that respect for you, and we want to make sure you're understanding, like, this is what's going on. And we don't want you just to blow it all on a Lamborghini. We want you to have a Lamborghini, but over time.
No.
Someone stocks and do this, and
you can stipulate. You get this money when you can do this, or this is what we intended for this money. We've set aside, $50,000 for each grandchild when they purchase their first home because we think that's important.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So, I mean, again, you can do this right. You can do it wrong. Most times we see it. We encourage all of our clients to have all their affairs in order, and whoever, if it's one of the daughters or the sons, then we tend to bring them in with the parents and let's talk about this. Have we got this? Because if something were to happen, are you looking for passwords?
Right.
Where's all that stuff, right? Because everything's on the computer, and just really having your ducks in a row and communicating with your kids why you're doing it and why you've selected one child over the other as executor, and just what you're trying to accomplish. And in some cases, I could be giving all the money to Dina and none of the money to Cari, and I could have a very good reason for doing that. But if I don't talk to Cari, and if I can't talk to Cari, then really should I be putting in my will? Like if she doesn't understand this, and we see this. I have a good friend who's going through this, and his parents his parents left the money to his brother who has the kids.
Yeah.
He doesn't have kids. He's not going to have kids, and so they feel like we've given you enough, and we want
the
to
grandkids,
generations to have it.
Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense, right? But again, it's that understanding, and then that whole just conversation of like, this is the reason why. And I don't think anyone should ever be ashamed of going like, this is our wishes. Like, this is where we wanted to go to, or like, one of the siblings could be very well off and the other one isn't, and they want to give them that money instead, but on the stipulation of like, okay, we want you to do better in life. However, we request that you invest it, or you do this or whatever, because they want to give them a better life in the end of it. So
you mentioned trustees that can help facilitate this. What is roughly a percentage or a cost? How is that fee structure?
Yeah, it's a percentage of the estate. And I mean, it's negotiable, I think. And you can also access the trustee on a help basis. Yeah. So, I mean, there is some flexibility around those, but those who can afford it, you should just have a trustee do it.
Yeah.
There will be no fighting. It'll be handled. No one will question the motives of anybody else. I mean, if it takes you 2 or 3 years, what's that cost, right? And again, they tend to say, "Oh, my son who's a lawyer, I'm going to put him a trustee." Well, if he's spending 3 or 4 hours a day for 6-7 months filing all these tax returns, going through the house, doing all this stuff, well, what's that worth to him in time? You don't want it to be a negative. And then if you're not getting paid properly for it, then you don't do it because you're not motivated. So I think looking at a trustee and seeing whether that works out, it makes a lot of sense. Or hiring someone outside of your family and paying them properly to do the job. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm so happy that you brought that up, Doug, because it is a consideration that people kind of leave again to the end, and they don't want to have those conversations, but it is very important, and it can make for a smoother and less contentious outcome for the family.
Yeah. A way easier transition for sure. A good shift.
Just you can see the pattern of what we talked about. We've talked about kids and talking to your kids about money, and starting them off the good lessons and having that open communication, and then having your kids, when they get married or in a relation, being able to talk about it and communicate it with it. And then as they get older, and if the divorce happens, having them figure out how that all works together. And then as they pass, again, always the communication of what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to do? And not have it be a family secret is clearly the way to go.
Nice.
Couldn't have wrapped it up better myself, Doug. Thank you so much for being with us. And we do really appreciate your insights and wisdom from the experience that you have, and how we can understand it's best to communicate about money.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead.
No, just appreciate you guys
Oh yeah.
spreading the word out there, because it's really important we do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's just again one of those conversations that it's not talked enough about. Um, maybe there are a few families that are out there that do sit down and they do this. Great, that's so wonderful. But I think it's just a topic, like Dina said at the very beginning, it's a taboo topic, and not many people want to talk about it, and or they don't know enough themselves. So just to get some education on it, even just a little show like this where it's just kind of a drop out here, drop out there, and someone passes by when they're scrolling, great. Get some information, and by all means, get educated on it for sure. So for those that are listening in, where can they find your services, Doug?
Yeah, we're OP Elite Wealth, and all you have to do is Google that or Doug Pinder. You'll find us. But I encourage everybody, wherever you are, ask lots of questions. Like there's there's financial advisors everywhere at the bank, everyone you're using with. Don't be afraid to use up their time and get knowledge and do that. But anyone who needs help with these things, we spend a lot of time, as Dina knows, helping people go through divorce and re-educate themselves and get up and going again. So yeah, we're OP Elite Wealth, and we're really happy to be in this community that spreads the word about how to do these things right and how to make lives better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, we'll have a little chat after.
And we are back the end of June with our premiere for season 5.
Our premiere for season 5. We're going to be going in, I think it's going to be something about summer.
Yeah, summer shifts, because we're going to be heading into the summer months.
Going into summer. So if you guys have any ideas about summer, what you guys do in the summer, how do you spend summer?
Are there high expectations that
are you guys going on a trip?
Has to be perfect. How's your vacation fund?
How's that ice cream fund, kids? Oh, yeah. They would call it the slush fund.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So much fun. Yeah. And go Oilers.
Yeah, I haven't really been watching too many games lately. I've been so busy, but how are they doing?
They're very well. They're
third round?
Second.
Or still second round? Okay. All right. Okay.
No, third.
They're in the third round.
Second? I don't know. Tricky question. Anyways, they're winning.
Well, we want to see it here in Alberta. I don't care what team it is, but I wanted a Canadian team, and we're third round, right? So yeah.
Okay,
too much money on the brain, right? Okay, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for shifting by. We'll see you guys in a few weeks for season 5. Have a great little break. We'll see you guys soon. Bye, shifty friends.